I'm Afrikaans, and I'm a mom of 2 daughters, 5 and 10 years old, and I'm also a mother of 3 unborn babies in heaven that's waiting for me. And as strange as it may sound, going through the miscarriages, and the second little one, Luke, which we named Luke, was born on the same, or we lost him on the same day that my sister's little one was born. So my parents went through rejoicing at 12 o'clock that afternoon with the second grandson being born, to 2 hours later having to fly down to Cape Town to come and console their sobbing daughter, because that pregnancy went into the second trimester. And it was gut-wrenching, but I fell on my knees one day in the garden in the winter, and I just sobbed my heart out, and I said to God, God, please explain this to me. Why the excitement of being pregnant, and then a few weeks later, it's the disappointment of not being able to hold that baby? Why? And it was there in that winter, cold winter month, when I was lying face down on the grass, crying my heart out to God, where He picked me up from that place. And that's the place where I got to meet God and His heart. And He whispered something amazing in my ear. And He said to me, Adri, pick yourself up. That was word 1. Okay. Then the lady that helps us cleaning the house, our domestic worker, Tandi, she arrived and she said, in our culture, Aibo, get up from here. She said, no, we're women, we're strong. You stand up. And I walked into the house, and that's where God said to me, Audrey, live your life right. Because you know what? You are blessed. Because one day, when you arrive at heaven's gates, you've got 3 extra surprises waiting for you. You're going to hold that babies. You're going to meet them. And you know what? In the toughest times of my life where I felt, I can't anymore, that is the exact thing that God used to keep me accountable, to keep my relationship grounded with Him. Because that's my driving force, is one day that I can get into heaven and actually hold my 3 little babies and have my 2 daughters that's going to be there with me and all the extended family. So just a bit of background about Afrikaans girls. Now, if you are in a household where there's only 2 girls and there's no boy, now in Afrikaans there's a saying, 'n boer maak 'n plan. So boere, they don't ask for help. They think they know everything and they can do everything. So needless to say, the second girl normally ends up being dad's appy. So, what is an appy? And you can hear my mom laughing. That is the girl that needs to mow the lawn. That is the girl who gets taught from a very young age, at about the age of 6 years old, how to use a spanner, a screwdriver, a drill, how to service a car, how to change your own wheels, how to do the clutch flights, paint the roof, weld, so. Not being funny, I'm one of that girls that if I walk into a hardware store, I get so excited when I go into the heavy machinery aisle. It's like a child going into a sweetie store. And normally the men go, huh? When I say, listen, I need this specific type of blade because I'm going to now work with wood, and I need that sandpaper to go with the grinder, and I need a router and it must have that drill bit. And the men go, huh? How does a lady know all of this? And boy, do I have fun doing those things. So the oldest girl gets the privilege of actually working with mom at home and in the house. So they always choose the jobs they want first. So needless to say, still till today, I cannot stand drying the dishes because I always wanted to wash the dishes. But I'm the youngest, so I always had to dry the dishes. I could never load the washing machine. I had to fold and iron, people. So the privilege of being the oldest in an Afrikaans household. And you'll hear why I'm telling you these stories now. So here's me, 22 years of age, moved down to Cape Town. And here I face my first giant. Now, that time when I was 22, it was still expensive to talk on a cell phone. So you only phoned when you were in trouble. So now mommy's in Joburg, and I'm going, I've got no choice. I have to phone my mom. And guess what my giant was? A twin tub washing machine, people. I looked at this thing and it was pipes everywhere. And I put the water in and it would just run out. And I was like, where do you put the soap in? And when do you put the Stay Soft in? Because this thing doesn't come with a manual. So needless to say, after 2 hours of trying to figure out this washing machine, want ek is mos nou 'n boer en 'n boer maak 'n plan. I had to my phone mommy and I said to her, Ma, I'm standing in front of this washing machine. How does this thing work? So needless to say, mommy helped me over the phone. And after that, the first thing I did was I saved up money for a front loader washing machine. One that you just press a button and it does it all by itself. And while I was preparing for this talk today, I felt God whisper in my heart, you know what, Adri? If you had a manual for that washing machine, you would have figured it out, chop, chop. And that's exactly what the Bible is in our lives. It's a manual. It's a manual given to us by God to live our lives according to the way that God intended us to live, to walk in His glory every single day, to become the best person that we can possibly be, to know the difference between right and wrong. And then I started thinking, how many people in the world don't have that privilege? We always talk about a broken world. Why is the world so broken? It lacks a manual. It lacks a mom and dad that will actually make you sit in a church service every Sunday, and then they give you off to the Sunday school. And I know why the NG Kerk did this, because they realized moms and dads need break for an hour and a half without kids on a Sunday. And we were forced to actually go to Sunday school. It was like a register that you had to tick in. And it was like school, you had to attend. And for me, when you're growing up, you think, oh, why must I go through this? And then you end up later on in life realizing, you know what, if you didn't go through that, God wouldn't have been able to install His principles in your life. And that's the principles. When the tough gets going, it carries you through. That's what develops who you are. That develops values. That develops why we do what we do every single day. That gives us this little thermometer that we can say, is this line straight or not? Should I be on this side or should I be on that side? So for me, Bible Society, you guys are doing an absolute amazing, amazing work. And I want to ask you guys again, please support this project. And the business that I work for, Khayelitsha Cookies, the very first thing that I realized after I joined this business is 99.9% of the women working there did not have a Bible at home. And I went out to go and try and find a Xhosa Bible. And I'm talking about 11 years ago now. And I found it difficult to find a Xhosa Bible. And then eventually I got so excited and I bought these ladies' Bibles and they went like, we can't have it. So I'm going, why can't you have it? No, you need to be a pastor to have the Bible. And that's where I realized my heart broke, because something we took for granted that was always in our households was such a privilege and an honor for these ladies. And they put so much value on this Bible that it was reserved for pastors. And I want to challenge you today. Do you value your Bible that much? Really, do you value your Bible that much? And then it brings me to the talk about Bible verses. Now, whom of you here has had a Bible verse that flipped your whole life upside down? That God gave you an instruction to say, you will do it, and He confirmed it through the Word in the Bible, and it just flipped your life upside down. Yours? There we go. Okay. And was it easy? No. Was it worth it? Yes. Okay. So my first Bible verse, I worked for a large coffee company, so did Renee, and I did very well for myself at a very young age. And I used to train up ladies in the hospitality industry on how to make cappuccinos and lattes and all of that. And that's where I realized, you know what, these ladies had no self-worth. None. Because they got shouted at the waiters. And these ladies didn't take pride in what they did. So eventually what I did is, yes, I gave them coffee training, but I sewed into their lives. I made them feel beautiful behind that machine. I made them feel that they are the only ones that can put up that cup of coffee. Do you know what the net results was? My area doubled in size and sales in less than a year. Why? People started taking pride in what they did because they felt valued as a person. So after many years doing that, I felt God leading me to quit my job, get something else. So I phoned around, put my CV out there, and the day I was about to go and sign a contract at another company selling dog food, I get this phone call from two directors saying, please come for an interview. So I go for an interview and I walk into this little factory that's literally half the size of what we're in now. 3 house ovens, 3 tables, 1 mixer, and 4 staff members. Khayelitsha Cookies. And as I put my foot into that business, I saw this image of 1,000 ladies plus baking. And that's where I realized, I just stepped into my purpose that God's called me. So it came at a cost. Gave up my career, gave up my corporate benefits, gave up half of my salary. That was the biggest sacrifice, being a newly married couple. And it was very tough because the ladies that we employ are ladies that can't speak English, they can't read, they can't write. So they are in no position to be employable by worldly standards. So they can't find even domestic employment. So we teach them in our factory to hand bake and hand pack cookies. What takes us 40 days to bake takes machine 1 day. If I have to replace the 96 ladies that we've got now with a machine, we go down employing 12 people and we increase our output 3-fold per day. Now, who of you would run a business that functions on 0.01% profit margins? Okay, any accountant will tell you, please go and book yourself into a facility, get your head red, and throw away the keys because you should not be in business. That doesn't make business sense. That's the business I manage. That's the business I run. So in 2013, the company already incurred 2.5 million rand in losses. And my directors called me into a meeting. They put a box of tissues on the table and they said, Adri, this business is going to close down. By then, we employed just short of 50 people. So they should have brought 2 boxes of tissues. That 1 box was not enough. I never realized that I had so much tears to cry. So I went back home, and here God gives me this verse that flipped my life upside down. Leviticus 26, verse 10. Now, I got challenged the other day on a radio interview by a non-believer that said to me, what? You put your life on the line for a dude that died 2,000 years ago and wrote a sentence in Leviticus, this dude called Leviticus? And I'm going, I don't even know if Leviticus wrote it. I know it's in Leviticus, but, I don't know the background history behind the Bible, but So I just laughed and I said to him, yes. And the long and short is, that promise in the Bible says that you will be a blessing out of your overflow. And this for a business that didn't even have an overflow, we had nothing. In fact, we have wolves knocking down the door to gather in debt. So I prayed, and God told me, give the directors 1 rand for the business. But you take over 2.5 million rand debt. So in essence, you are paying 2.5 million rand for a business. The net asset value of the business was 100,000 rand. So who of you have ever bought a broken Golf and paid a Porsche's price for it? Right. That's why my accountant still today goes, Adri, jy's nie lekker nie. Something's not right. And I'm going, you know what? From an earthly point of view, yes, may look that it's not right. But I'm obedient in what God tells me to do. And that's what I did. From day one, my management team stood by my side. They supported me. They prayed with me. The one thing, we were this manufacturer of cookies, guys. We didn't even have a delivery vehicle. So the first thing we prayed for was, God, please, can you not make a way for a delivery vehicle? And my name is not Adri for nothing. My grandma knew better when she gave me my name when I was little, because God always speaks to me in threes. That's why it's Adri. Okay, right. So 3 months later, after buying this business, I get 3 phone calls on one day. And the first is from one of our key suppliers saying, we've got a little present for you. 3 weeks later, the present arrives, and it's a delivery vehicle paid for, people. Not just that, this delivery vehicle was actually written off by a donkey cart in Khayelitsha. So they just panel beated it nicely for us, and here's our delivery vehicle. But you know what? It's a delivery vehicle. So the first thing, and I'm very naughty in nature, first thing I go is see, God can speak to donkeys. If it wasn't for that donkey, we wouldn't have had our delivery vehicle. So he still does miracles today. So I just hope the donkey was all right afterwards. But we don't know the end of that story. So it was very, very difficult to turn this business around. But you know what? In literally less than 4 years, we managed to pay back 800,000 rand of that debt. This for a business that's never made profit in its life before. Functioning on 0.01% profit margin. And look, our external accountant, Louis, still says, I'm a chartered accountant and I've been doing books for my entire life, but these books of yours, there's something happening here, because what's happening here does not make sense. And I'm going, it doesn't have to make sense to you, it makes God sense. And then in 2015, around the Christmas table, the week before that, I went down on my knees and I prayed at a church service. And the song was playing, God, break my heart for what breaks yours. Now, people, if you are filled with the Holy Spirit and you feel the Holy Spirit asking you to do something, then just realize afterwards God is going to answer what you pray when you feel led. Now I went down on my knees and I raised my hands to heaven and I said, Dear God, break my heart for what breaks yours. And you know what? God broke my heart for children of South Africa. And I don't know if you guys know that. 64% South African children die before the age of 5 due to malnutrition as underlying causes. I held a dying baby at the Brooklyn Chest Hospital. She was 3 weeks old. Her name was called Nolatando. We went in every second weekend. Another thing that you shouldn't really do unless God calls you to do it, to go and help the nurses to look after these babies. And the nurse gave it to me, and she said to me, Adri, this child's not going to make it through tonight, because we will have to tube her. She's not drinking. Once they get tubed, they don't make it. So I sat with this premature little baby that must probably weighed 1.2 kilograms. And prior to that in my life, I never held a baby, because I kept on saying to people, I don't know what to do with them. They look very pretty, but I'm not this natural mommy. And I sat there and I cried my heart out. I prayed for that baby for 2 hours. She ended up drinking that 15 milliliters of milk. Do you know that that child turned 13 this year? Okay. And that's why I'm so passionate about this business. Because every woman we employ means 5 to 7 children do not form part of that statistics. So for me, when I want to give up, when the going gets tough, and believe you me, that's a whole other sermon that I can preach of all the trials and tribulations and giants we've faced in this business so far and still facing. When I feel like giving up, I go and stand in our prayer room that actually overlooks the entire factory. And I just get that image of Nolatand. And I realize, if I give up, who's going to look after these women? And yeah, our motto is very easy. 1,000 cookies per day equals 1 full-time job equals 5 full tummies. That's it. That's our business model. And we literally get executive MBAs from all over the world that come to our factory because it's such a unique, different business because everybody is geared at mechanization. And here we specifically do things as manual as possible for the job creation. And then a week after that prayer session in church, God said to me verbally around the Christmas table, and it's the first time ever that I heard God speak to me. And I went quiet because I heard God say, fill a truck with animal feed for the farmers in the drought. So I still looked up, and my family knows me, I'm not quiet. So the fact that I went quiet around a Christmas table, and I said to my dad, you won't believe it, but I am so certain that God just told me audibly to do this. My dad said, my girl, in Afrikaans, ek gaan vir jou 'n groot Kersgeskenk gee. Ek gaan jou inboek in 'n fasiliteit, want nou vra jy nie meer net vir jouself, vra in jou kop nie, jy antwoord jouself ook. So, yeah. But that joke aside, 3 weeks later, I prayed, and all the quotes we got in was 180,000, 200,000. And I kept on saying, God, I've only got 5,000 rand. God, I've only got 5,000 rand. And eventually on the 20th of January, went down on my knees in 2016 and I prayed and I said, God, before end of play today, if I don't get a truck filled with 5,000 rand, I know it was not from you and I move on. 10 o'clock that morning, we get a phone call from a farmer in the Grabouw area saying, pay my laborers 5,000 rand and you can bale anything that's on my land. My dad, who worked at MAN Truck and Bus, organized the truck, the diesel, and the driver. Eventually, I didn't know which farmer to give this to, so now it's like next obstacle. So eventually, I phoned Boer Noord. They say the truck must go to Boshoff. 10 o'clock that night, they phone us to say, no, the truck mustn't go to Boshoff anymore. It now needs to go to Williston. So now I have to make all the corporate calls, and eventually this truck gets rerouted to Williston. And I phoned the farmer on the Friday afternoon, and I said, Roelof, you don't know me. My name is Adri. I'm bringing you a truck full of animal feed tomorrow. And his first words were, this is a sick joke. Don't do this to us. I said to him, it's not a joke. And he said, thank you very much, but I can't pay you. So I said to him, you don't have to. So we left, and we followed suit that next morning behind this truck. We arrived on that farm where the farmers no longer had food in their houses. They clapped together to get a small tin of coffee, a small packet of sugar, and 1 tin of milk that we could have coffee. It smelled like an abattoir when we arrived on that farm. The only reason why I got a hold of this farmer was that he was on his way to the co-op to go and buy bullets to cull all his animals, like so many other farmers in that area. And most of that farmers turned the guns on themselves halfway through because they couldn't stand it. The morning when that truck arrived on that farm, clouds opened up and there was this ray of light that shone on top of that truck. And God whispered in my heart, Adri, because of your obedience, I'm bringing my rescue, and my will, and my provision into a dark world. Do you know that the farmers in Williston, their past actually picked up and left town? That's how bad it was. So they weren't just lost. They were lost without spiritual guidance. So on the way back, I cried my heart out. And then God showed me this image of a fleet of trucks. So, you know, Sarah in the Bible, how she laughed. I think that's how I sounded at the back of the car. I'm going, no. One was difficult enough. How are we going to get a fleet of trucks? And the very next day, Tygerberg, Karin Basson, afternoon presenter, spoke about these drought. Long story short, I asked her to go to our website, and her appointment that afternoon cancelled. So she phoned me, she said to me, can I put you on air? So I said, yes, go for it. And I spoke my heart out about what happened the previous day. Literally a day later, I get a phone call from Cedric going, Adri, God opened up Tygerberg's table for next week, a few months ago already, that he told us to keep that week. And in a half an hour meeting, Project SOS 100 was born. as Beneska said, that was literally, I think, the theme song that we played that week, God is on the move, was truly, you could feel it. Every truck delivery that we did, God opened up these clouds and this ray of light would just shine on top of the trucks. Every time we would drive back to Cape Town, and literally I drove behind each truck, met each farmer, did the due diligence to make sure that they couldn't afford animal feed themselves. Every time we would come back to Cape Town, there would be a rainbow over Cape Town. And it would be that promise. You could physically feel coming from Worcester, driving into Cape Town, how this absolute blessing of God was just on Cape Town that week. Then on the 7th truck delivery, we went through to Carnarvon. And God started speaking to my husband on the Sunday night to say, you need to start fasting and praying for your wife's safety. And he was in Namibia. We left very early the Monday morning. Garth Blanche filmed the 1 truck delivery that we did there. And one of the farmers gave their lives to the Lord next to that truck with a film crew filming without any of us actually leading him into the salvation prayer, because he looked down and he said, and this was one of the very bad farmers in that area, so no one liked this oak, and he said he looked down because he didn't want to pray, because he doesn't like this Christian thing, and he looked down and he felt this presence in front of him, and he looked up and he physically saw feet, bare feet standing in front of him in the sand. And by the time he reached the knees, he realized, don't look up any further because you're going to be stricken dead today, because this is God himself standing in front of you. He gave his life to the Lord there. He's one of the biggest evangelists in that area right now. So, we've seen many, many salvations in that trips. And the long and short is I also had this uneasy feeling about this trip. And one of the reporters, who's also now at Tygerberg, Gerald Peterson, in the morning, he drove with me. And as we reached Carnarvon, I said to him, Gerald, something's wrong. Can you please drive? Because I've been driving 2 weeks non-stop with 2-3 hours sleep at night, mostly gravel roads. Please take the wheel. And he did. And we prayed. And I strapped myself in the front seat, put the headrest back 2 clicks, and fell asleep. A half an hour later, I woke up with the car veering off the road, and we rolled. The back tire of the vehicle burst, and we rolled 6.5 times. I got flung from the front seat to the back seat, even though I had my safety belt on. We actually went to the accident site last week, and standing at that accident site, I realized how far we've rolled. And the farmer who helped me at that accident scene, grown men just crying, because they said the one photo that I never realized is one of the farmers had his hat in his hand, and it was at that time that they gave respect to Adri, who has left him because she died. That farmer would have driven past, and he felt God telling him to turn around. And they left the truck driver to look after me, after the body in the car, until the ambulance can come and fetch the body. And he got out and he felt God leading him to go into the car and put his hand on my chest and pray. And he said he had to pray himself up before he climbed in that car, because he's never seen a dead body and he wasn't planning to see one soon. So he had the fright of his life. I think he instantly went grey after that, because he was fairly grey by the time we saw him now, last week Wednesday. And he said when he put his hands on my heart, my eyes opened up. And he knew God has called him to help. Took that farmer's 3.5 hours with a car grinder, or a grinder and a car battery, ek sê mos 'n boer maak 'n plan, to cut me out of this wreck. So eventually, when we left, and he told my parents that as well, they actually stayed behind and they started praying, and they said, this girl's not going to make it. But they prayed. We only heard on Thursday that all the farmers that we helped, when they heard the ambulance was coming to fetch me, that next day on the Wednesday, as the ambulance left Carnarvon all the way to Cape Town, they actually walked out to the roadsides from their farm as this little road of honor where they stood next to the roadsides to pray that God can spare my life. And I'll never forget, in the ambulance drivers, by the time they fetched me, because the doctor didn't make a very good call in Carnarvon, he thought it was only my arms that was broken. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I had internal bleeding. And instead of airlifting me, they sent an ambulance to drive through the night from Cape Town to come and fetch me. But God's hand was on my life because they sent an ICU ambulance. And when they hooked me up to the machines in the ICU ambulance, they realized this girl ain't going to make it back to Cape Town. And I remember just praying, saying, God, spare my life that I can see my girls and my husband one more time. Once. And I remember ambulance driver waking me up just past Mama's prayer. He said to me, Lady, jy gaan nou moet baklei hier saam met ons. Ons sukkel met jou. So I said to him, ek weet, ek is moeg. And he said to me, jy beter nou yourself towards yourself pull. Ons is half an hour away. Jou family wag vir jou. Ruk jouself reg. So yeah, that's the Afrikaans version of what he said. And I will take out the nice words in between. But needless to say, I felt that fight, that true fight for the difference between living and dying. As I arrived at the hospital, so my mom, my dad, my husband, and my eldest daughter. And that's where I had my first flatline experience. And plenty of people talk about their flatline experience and they go, oh, they see this beautiful light at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't like that for me. It felt like someone was pushing me down this corridor at 1,000 kilometers per hour with flashing lights next to me. And I remember all I could do was actually pray. And I felt a fear that came over me to say, God, is my relationship strong enough with you that my name is in the book of life? Doesn't matter at that moment what you did, who you are, where you work, where your family is. At that moment in time, it's you and God. And it's where you realize this is where God is going to keep you accountable for who you are on earth. And that moment changed my life forever. Because that moment keeps me accountable every single day to go, Adri, if God takes your life today, is your name in the book of life? Is your relationship with your God strong enough that He will, once you reach heaven, go, good and faithful servant. You've run the race with endurance. That's what it's all about. And yes, we helped 160 farmers. We delivered 27 trucks. And my arms were very badly broken. So I woke up with this arm wrapped around my head, here over my face. So I still remember asking people, ag, pak net my handjie vir my reg asseblief, because this thing freaked me out completely here in my face. And the left arm was also so badly broken that the doctors wanted to amputate the left arm, and the right arm, which I'm holding the microphone with now, was paralyzed because the nerve got so damaged that they couldn't repair it. That's where the Bible came in again, and these powerful verses that we take for granted. God sent 3 people, listeners from Radio Tygerberg, into my hospital room that's never ever done this in their entire lives. They said to me, we've never gone to come and visit someone we don't know in hospital, but I can't take it anymore. God told me, Hebrews 11 verse 1. And that's what I need to give to you. And you know what? Hebrews 11 verse 1 is the verse I prayed over this arm, and I called this arm Sleeping Beauty. The doctor's reports came back and they said, never going to use this arm again. Guess what? Yeah. So Sleeping Beauty did wake up from the dead, from her beauty sleep. The long and short is both my arms have got exactly 27 centimeters scars. Combined between the 2 and the 12 surgeries I had to go through, there's exactly 160 holes in my arms. We helped 160 farmers, 27 trucks delivered. And the day I realized that was when Tygerberg did a fundraiser and Gary Kieswetter was there. And I donated 777, trusting for God for healing. And God gave him this image with that 777 of 2 mangled arms. And God whispered, phone that lady and tell her your arms are God's trophies, without knowing what my history is and what happened. And that is the day that I could look myself in the mirror and go, Adri, yes, it looks like you were in a shark attack. So in winter, I look normal. In summer, these scars are horrific and you can see them a mile away. And I always make the joke to say you should see what the shark looks like. But in any case, we got used to the scars on my arms. But that is the main thing that God's used in my life. Where you know when you've got this awkward silence when you walk into a place, especially in summer, people go, and they can't actually look you in the eye because all they're thinking is like, what the hell happened with this person? And you can see it a mile away. So I first leave them a little bit because, I've got a sense of humor. So I first leave them a little bit to wonder, and then I actually tell my story. And God has used these arms so much that in literally 7 weeks from now, I'm flying over to America to actually go and do talks and TEDx talks at the universities to tell the students, God still lives. He is still the miracle working God. And there's a few Bible verses in my life that's changed my life forever. So I want to challenge each one of you. The Bible verses that God has given to you in your life, has He worked enough through you to actually change the world to a better place? Do you know that each one of us here has got the most amazing talent that no one else has got? We're uniquely created, and we have all been created with a purpose in life. And do you know what that purpose is? And the Bible verse was read early on this morning. Sorry, I didn't page. It's on the last page. That you need to love your neighbor as yourself. Daily, I challenge these executive MBAs that come from all over the world to our factory to come and hear what we do. And I tell them I want to extend one challenge to you. And I'm going to extend the same challenge to you today. And I hope that each one of you are going to embrace this challenge. You need to write an email. The email that you're going to write is an email of one-liners. We don't have time in a busy world to read a lot. Okay, the one-liner is as follows. You need to go and do a good deed before this end of play Friday this week. The good deed must not be a monetary good deed. It needs to have your time and your talent that you need to put in. So may it be washing someone else's dog, taking a dog for a walk, loading groceries for an elderly lady in the car, helping a pregnant mom, making a meal for a family that needs it. Okay. Anything like that. So you need to write a one-liner email to say, what did you do this week to better someone else's life? The second line that you need to answer is, how did it make that person feel? And the third line is, how did it make you feel? And I want you to accept that challenge, because after you've done it and you wrote that email, you will understand how beautifully God has actually put together the word in the Bible and why He specifically said, love your neighbor as yourself. Because in doing that deed, you're going to realize you will have joy. Joy that supersedes the person that you did the good deed for. But it takes work. It's not going to be easy. Okay? And I want you to embrace that challenge. And I want you to actually accept that challenge and do it on a weekly basis. And I had a guy in my office the other day to say, Adri, you know what? If you help your neighbor, and that neighbor helps the next neighbor, and that neighbor helps the next neighbor, and so we go, there would be no hunger, starvation in this world. So women, today and men, may today be the woman who starts changing the world. May each of you here be the change maker. May each of you pay it forward and challenge people to be that beam of light for someone else that desperately needs it. By your good deeds, we can change this world. So I want you to embrace it and walk out here as women that change the world.